Well, in that case, I'll get my agenda up here and we will call this meeting to order. And we will begin with our update on federal legislative issues.
Supervisor Rutherford, if you don't mind, if I could just, an item, we're gonna pull the federal legislation item off the agenda, and we'll report on that next month.
Item 4?
Item 4, yes.
Okay, well, how about we start with item 1?
So item 1 is going to be Gary Hoytsma will be giving an update on the on federal legislative issues.
Oh.
Go ahead, Gary.
Okay, this is Gary. Thank you very much. Since our written report, a couple of significant events here in Washington. First, this week we had the release of the president's budget this week, this annual budget for fiscal year 21. Last week we had the State of the Union address, and last week we also had our South Coast staff here in Washington for a little bit. We had a round of meetings on the Hill, also meetings with our business coalition group members, a few of them, and some other stakeholders. So a couple of quick takeaways from all this. First, on the Cleaner Trucks Initiative, this is the rulemaking on the ultra-low NOx rule that we've been discussing. We had a good chance to meet with the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee staff to press them to hold a hearing on this subject, and they are amenable to that. We put in a good word of why such a public hearing would be a good thing to do, and I did a little follow-up check this week, and they have it actively under consideration. So that was a good result there. So we'll keep an eye on that. A hearing could happen before summer is what the plan would be. So we'll see what happens with that. Second, on transportation and infrastructure, the president in his State of the Union address really didn't address it very much, but in terms of a bigger infrastructure bill this year. But he did endorse the Senate bill, the Barrasso-Carper bill, which is the 5-year surface transportation reauthorization for highways and transit. This is a bill that passed through the Senate committee last year, and it's probably going to the floor later this year. It includes a DERA reauthorization and funding for infrastructure on alternative fuel corridors and other climate and environmental related things that we're interested in. So we're keeping an eye on that as it negotiates with a similar House bill that will be separately done in the House. The president's budget talked about infrastructure. It had a provision in there for a big $1 trillion infrastructure plan over 10 years, but nobody here in Washington is taking it too seriously right now. The pay-fors don't add up, don't seem serious. So I think the focus on infrastructure this year is going to be on that surface transportation bill. And quickly, thirdly, just the president's budget. You will have seen reports of these usual serious cuts in the EPA programs and the elimination of the targeted airshed program, proposals to cut back DERA, proposals to eliminate the ARPA-E program at Energy Department and other clean energy-related programs there. There again, these kind of proposals have been put on the table the last 2-3 years by the administration, but Congress always rejects those proposals, and we expect that to happen again this year. So we're not too worried about that. So that's my quick report today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? All right. Thank you very much for that. We have a next federal report.
So the next federal report will be Amelia Jenkins from Casting Associates.
Hi, good morning, Supervisor Rutherford and Chairman Burke. I hope you all are doing well. We finally got a little bit of sunshine here. Gary did a great job summarizing everything that is going on. The one thing I will add is, as part of the visit last week by staff, we got a really good sense in the House, both with the House Democratic Energy and Commerce staff, also with the Democratic EPW staff, that the Clean Trucks Initiative is a top priority as they're able to move legislation in the House. And we also got assurances from the House Transportation Democrats, even though we weren't able to meet with them, that their legislation will be pretty forward-leaning on air and other low-carbon transportation initiatives. So I'll just end there for the interest of time, and if folks have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, anybody have anything? Right, thank you, Amelia, we appreciate that. Is Mark on the line?
Supervisor Rutherford, Dr. Burke, this is Dave Ramey with Kadish and Associates. I'm giving the report today. And in addition to what Gary and Amelia have said, to make up for all those deficiencies in the President's budget on programs that we care about, DERA, Targeted Airshed Grants, Section 103, 105 funds, the appropriations process will be getting underway soon. Deadlines are coming up the end of next week and the week after that for the House and Senate. We're working with your staff on submissions, and we will get after filling those accounts back up to where we want them and hopefully a little beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that update. Anything else on the federal level? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 2, which is our state legislative update. Do we have David on the line?
It'll be Jarrell. Jarrell, are you on the line?
Hi, yes. Sorry. I wasn't sure which David you were referring to. So we submitted our written report. Generally speaking, we had several good meetings with legislators, some of the Majority Leader Ian Calderon, Christina Garcia, Reggie Jones Sawyer, discussing AB, among other things, implementation of AB 617 and incentive programs, as well as potential paths forward for legislation for initiatives.
All right, Derek, I'm just going to let you call them since I can't seem to get the names right, so it's on you.
All right, thank you, Supervisor. All right, Jarrell, thank you very much. Next one is Ross Buckley.
Wait a minute. Was that the report?
That was the report from Quintana, Hartman, and
Let the record reflect it wasn't much of a report.
okay. We'll talk to David today on that. Okay. Next item, or the next one is Ross Buckley from California Advisors.
Thanks, Derek. It's Ross. Just wanted to provide a brief update on kind of what's been going on in Sacramento last month. So in the end of January 31st marked the 2-year bill deadline. That was bills introduced last year that they had to move out of their original House by the end of the month in January. The focus of the legislature has now turned to new bills in the new session, and we are coming up on the bill introduction deadline on February 21st, which is next Friday. Expect to see, several hundred bills introduced in both houses over the next, 7 days. And then of note for that following week as well, for next week, current currently the governor is slated to give his State of the State address on February 19th, so we'll get another glimpse of what his priorities are for the year and moving forward. And that's my update.
Delgado, welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning. We just received the report from California advisors. Are there any questions on that report? All right. Derek?
Sure. Paul Gonzalez from Gonzalez and Son.
Good morning, everyone. Don't have much to add to our written report. I do want to update the committee, though, on a report that was released yesterday by the Legislative Analyst Office. For those of you who don't know, the LAO is the nonpartisan analyst office for the legislature, and they give typically reviews and analysis on the governor's budget. And this review that they gave was specifically focused on the governor's climate change proposal that was in his January budget. And we sent this to your staff yesterday for their review, and I recommend everybody taking a look at it. It's got a lot of good information in it. But the report focuses on 4 areas. The first one is the $965 million cap-and-trade expenditure plan. The second one is the $25 million for adaptation, research, and technical assistance. They reviewed the $250 million new Catalyst loan fund, and they also reviewed the $4.8 billion climate bond. And from those 4, quick summary of them is basically there's a lot less money, about $250 million less in discretionary funding for cap-and-trade, so the legislature really should focus on their priorities, having less revenues in that account. For the climate adaptation and research and technical assistance, again, they said there's really not enough money in there to fund all the priorities, so we need to really focus on which priorities are important to the state. The loan fund, the Climate Catalyst Loan Fund, they believe is too big of a project. There's not enough projects in there to be able to decide which ones to fund with such a big project at $1 billion. They thought that the legislature should scale it down and use some of those funds in other areas. And then for the climate bond, they thought it was a good idea, but they also said it comes with risk in the out years with them foreseeing a economic recession coming. So those are the 4 quick summaries of it. But again, I would recommend everybody take a look at it. It's a great piece of literature. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Paul. Derek, will you be sending that out to all of us?
Yes, we will.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for Paul? All right. This brings us to item number 3, update regarding voting district authorization.
Thank you, Supervisor Rutherford and committee members. Update to our legislation for the voting district authorization. As you know, that we pulled SB 732. Essentially, it died because it didn't get out of the House origination by the end of January, or out of committee, Appropriations Committee, by the 21st of January. We were able to secure another author to introduce a spot bill for us. That was thanks to David Quintana. Majority Leader Ian Calderon introduced AB 2241 as a spot bill for us to give us more time to be able to work with other stakeholders to bring them on board to support this bill for the voting district authorization. Additionally, since our last legislative committee meeting, we held over 24 meetings up in Sacramento. Examples is Senate Pro Tem President Tony Atkins' staff, Speaker Rendon's staff, and other legislators and stakeholders to discuss our bill that we want to reintroduce, or obviously it's already been reintroduced here in February. The spot bill, there is a deadline for us to submit to Ledge Council the substantive language of the bill by March the 4th. So again, we're working with especially the building trades and others. We did have some really good meetings this past or earlier this week with some of the building trades members who were, so they like the bill. They just want to make sure on their end that everything is good with their fellow union members, or fellow unions, I should say. That's pretty much it. I'm available to answer any questions from the committee.
So Derek, when was the spot bill introduced?
So it was introduced, we got late word on Wednesday that Majority Leader Calderon agreed to it, and it was introduced yesterday.
And what language are we proposing to put into that? Is it the last version that we saw 732, or are you tweaking it?
I think we're not going to really tweak it a whole lot. It's going to be the last version that the committee saw. If there are any tweaks to it, obviously we'll let committee members know, as we promised, when there's going to be any tweaks to it. I know that there's a couple of stakeholders that wanted some tweaks to it. I know the Natural Gas Coalition, I saw them on Wednesday in Sacramento. They wanted a couple tweaks, a couple words changed, but we're going to talk about that internally. And then if we decide to tweak it, obviously let you know and amend the language.
Dr. Burke, any comments?
I was just wondering if the language changes that you had requested were included.
I'm sorry, see, if the language that we requested was
The
included?
language that Supervisor Rutherford had requested, was that included?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay, I'm good.
Senator, any questions?
I do. I know that there was going to be outreach to a few of the senators. Did that happen, Derek?
Yes, so we reached out to Senator Durazo. Wayne and I met with her week before last. We also met with Senator Archuleta and Senator Leiva's staff and Senator Gonzalez's staff.
Were any receptive to being co-authors?
You know what? They all kind of did the dance, and they just wanted to find out where building trades was in on this. Although they are supportive of the, they indicated they were in support of it, but they just wanted to figure out, where building trades was on this.
And is Kip helping?
So we did meet with Kip. I'm going to say yes, he is helping us, whether, showing that the Pro Tem's office is supportive of it, but again.
I'm going to say he's helping us.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
I want to believe he is. I know he's been very supportive of this in the past, and he'll do whatever he can on his end to help us get it, whether we get an author or when it gets to the committees.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll watch our email then for the language to come through.
Yes.
Any other discussion on number 3? All right, hearing none, we have pulled item number 4. This takes us to other business. Is there anything for the committee? Then we're in order for public comment. I have no one in Rancho Cucamonga wanting to speak. Do any of the remote locations have speakers?
No.
How about there in Diamond Bar?
Yes, Harvey Etter.
Good morning, Harvey. Start whenever you're ready.
Good morning, thank you. Good morning, happy Valentine's Day. My name's Harvey Etter. I'm speaking for myself and for the Public Solar Power Coalition. I think legislation is needed. We used to have a refundable solar tax credit for low income in the state. And when I did a study 40 years ago for the PUC, the Low Income Solar Equity Program, we showed how that could be used to leverage housing. There's a place to put in solar so you can, for transportation and your other energy needs and lower emissions. And then there's the housing, transportation, jobs, emissions trade-off. They got an instituted transportation at UCLA and planning, et cetera. This is nothing new. And it's an environmental justice issue. On the street, homeless people, okay? They're right by, freeways and major, thoroughfares, and they're breathing all this stuff in. We are, okay? Low income, equity. We put into the 16 plan, the Piketty's plan of the book on equity, the French economist, and it was purged along with Naomi Klein's book on climate change. So housing, low-income housing is an issue, okay? There has been for 20 years a home ownership voucher. On the 31st of January, the feds reissued this. It comes from 20 years ago, 10 years ago when the crash came and stuff was 1023 cents. Low income and stuff could have all got places, but it didn't happen. The housing tax credits, 80-90% is paid for federal and state tax credits. There was a proposal recently for $300 million here in state. I'm not sure what happened to the current legislation. This is instead of just for the well-informed, the in-crowd, and the wealthy, where they get 80-90% of this paid for and then guaranteed income from Section 8, that the home ownership pays for equity for the low income, and this should be used. The kind of hiding the program with the city and the county and LA, but anyway, this has to be done. Refundable tax credit, which was done in the state, it was up to $3,000 per hot water system, per electric, and for space heating, and that could be used for down to leverage. So this is a nexus that equity is a big problem. It's a structural problem in our democracy. Our federal government's been taken over by Trump, and we don't know what's going to happen. Bloomberg, Bernie nexus, okay? What's going to happen with the so-called solar/Green New Deal and how it's implemented, and what's happening here in California. We got shut down by the ACLU too. That's more to come later.
Thank you, Harvey. Happy Valentine's Day to you as well. Our next meeting date is scheduled for March 13th. Any further comment from the committee? If not, thank you for participating this morning. We will stand adjourned.
Thank you.